Unleash the power of purpose with impactful business voices, hosted by Nancy Baki and Anita Larsen. Each week, you'll be inspired by stories from companies that are making a real difference in the world, and you'll learn practical tips on how to grow your business with an impact.
Welcome back to our podcast. For those of you who've been with us before, welcome back. And if you haven't been here before, we're happy to have you. And this is where we share stories of businesses and business owners that make an impact in the world, in the lives of their clients, in their communities, and hope that they inspire you to make the same impact and take the step to share your passion and your experience with other people as well. We're your hosts. I'm Anita Larsen.
And I'm Nancy Baki. Welcome, everybody, for another awesome week together. So we have with us today Bonnie Mikelson and Amy Terrell. They are both the founders of EMDR and Beyond. They've been doing this since 2005. And they've been making such a difference in the world of mental health. We really had to bring them here today. They're specializing in trauma education and treatment through this EMDR therapy that you'll learn a little bit more, and other modalities as well. Their impact has been so significant as they've trained countless EMDR clinicians across the Midwest, and they're continuing to grow their expertise through ongoing training and consultation. So we're both really, really excited to have them on our podcast this morning, learn a little bit more about their inspiring story, how they're making that difference in the world of mental health, especially today. So let us bring on Bonnie and Amy. Bonnie and Amy, welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
We're so excited to have you here. So I am so excited to learn about EMDR. It's not a topic I'm very familiar with. So I'm looking forward to learning more about what it does, how it helps, what you have done with it. I've heard you referred to as the EMDR specialist in the Midwest. And from what Nancy's been telling me, you've both been like difference makers in the EMDR world. So first of all, for myself and any of our listeners that have no idea what EMDR is, can you talk about it? What is it specifically? How does it link to trauma? And maybe what type of trauma are we talking about here? So if you could elaborate, that would be great.
Mm-hmm. Sure. So EMDR stands for, that's a good way to start, I think, eye movement, desensitization, and reprocessing. So you can understand why we just prefer to say EMDR, because it sounds really strange. And it is strange in some ways, right? It's very different than traditional talk therapy. EMDR has a focus on how life experiences and memory and adverse experiences has impacted someone's present life. And so that is a little bit of a sidestep from more traditional talk therapy models. And it is different because of the eye movement piece, of course. And, we can talk more about that, but it is a technique that allows people, when they're ready, in the safety of their relationship with their therapist, to visit some of the memories that may be impacting their present life, and allow that person to move through the memory in a way that they are centered in present time. And that allows for them to be able to connect with more adaptive thinking and resiliency. So
one real quick way I would have to expand or illustrate what Amy is talking about is we all have differences between what we think in our head and what we say, and then what we believe in our heart. So I think in my head, I'm a competent professional, but in my heart, my past experiences may contribute a great number of negative beliefs that really are not true, or at least no longer true in the present. one thing that I think is so important is for people to expand their understanding of what trauma is. Just think about what you think trauma is. Most of us know it's traumatic to be a veteran who had active combat. It's traumatic to lose a child. That's probably one of the most traumatic things that human beings can go through is lose a child, and child loss is difficult for even the experts, first responders, EMT, and others. When they lose a child, when they can't save a child, that has longer lasting impact. So what is trauma? Trauma is anything that happens that overwhelms our brain, and so we can't function. And that can include, I was just reflecting back on some of my experiences, because when I first got trained in trauma, I didn't know that I was working with trauma already. Quite honestly, everybody has adverse experiences. So I was thinking about a woman I worked with who was in her 80s, and she had always been very independent. In Iowa, we have a lot of ice and snow, and she went out of her house, slipped on the ground, fell down, and was fearful to go out again. Now, nobody would label that typically PTSD, but her family called and said, she was so independent. What can we do? With some EMDR work, she was able to get back to her more independent self. It is really, we saw it in the pandemic. That was traumatic for the entire world, which is why people like us who specialize in trauma are extremely busy. And we are also very committed to training more people to address trauma. So if you think about any of the times that you've had experiences that it just your prefrontal cortex, your thinking brain just wasn't there emotionally and physically, you were reacting. Those are the things that sometimes get stuck in our brain. And as Amy was saying, we get stuck in the past. It affects how we are now. And we may not even know it.
That's such a great point, Bonnie, that, expanding the view of what we consider trauma to be. And it could be so much more and so many different instances of trauma than what we consider as the stereotypical trauma.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I think, with EMDR, we take even a broader lens, that it's not always just trauma in that, even in that definition that Bonnie gave, but sometimes it's the adversity just in life, the challenges that we have, maybe at some point we have an overwhelming amount of stressors that impact our ability to really function at our best. And in those times, we may develop memory neural networks that are later on going to cause us to feel anxiety or fear or panic. It may seem completely unrelated to anything, but it's connected to that overwhelming time in our life. Another form of trauma that's not talked about as often, but is probably one of the most impactful things that people can go through and not be aware of how much it's impacting their life, is the trauma of omission. So the things that we all need that we don't get. And so if you're someone who, was raised by human parents, which all human parents are not perfect. And, of course, none of us expect that we would have, perfect upbringing. But if there were chronic misattunement issues, or a parent was unavailable emotionally to really connect with a child, then often we're looking at needs that were not met that now impact current day relationships in multiple different ways. So EMDR can also help with trauma of omission.
I love it. And, I when you were speaking, both of you, I thought of, oh my goodness, this is so amazing that this is coming out more in the world after the pandemic. Yes. I mean, the pandemic brought so much. I heard about EMDR only last year. Pretty new to me. And when I looked at what it started in 1987. I was like, what? We never even heard about this in here,
Right.
And now there's EMDR therapists like everywhere. worldwide, right?
Yes.
And coming back to the pandemic, it made so many changes to the human, and especially like the teens and all that. And now EMDR is really shining out there, right? It's, I mean, there's still a lot of people that don't know about it. But just curious to know, how did you guys get started in the field of EMDR, and what really made you guys decide to start your own practice, become an entrepreneur, and help others with this trauma?
Well, I will start with that since I got there first, so to speak. So, and I had my usual strange response. Whatever I'm supposed to do, I usually am dragging my feet. So here it was, mid 90s, and EMDR had been founded, like you said, in the late 80s, and was starting to get research, but it was still experimental. However, I had two different therapist colleagues who got trained and said, "Oh, Bonnie, you need to get trained in this new technique." Then it was called a technique. Now it's a model, it's a therapy, but it was called a technique. And I didn't want to drag my feet because I thought, I don't work with trauma. Pop. I was 20 years in the mental health field, but we didn't have a trauma lens then. And so I couldn't see it. And it doesn't mean I wasn't helpful to people. There are lots of things, and in particular, from a sincere heart, which I had, that can help people heal. But finally, I caved because I had two people who had adverse childhood experiences. One had a mother who was had personality disorder, and that's pretty traumatic for a child from preverbal on up. And there was another one who kept having recurring anxiety that he couldn't explain. So I went for them. I can't help them. I want to learn more. And then I still dragged my feet, and I thought my own belief about myself was I'm not good enough. So I put off getting the rest of the training for 2 more years. And I finally did it. When I did it, I found out everybody else had the same questions I did about the process. And so then pretty soon I was volunteering to help with trainings that were created by a trauma network for nonprofits. And in the process of doing that, I met Amy. She was in basic training that I was facilitating, and she was in my group. And I don't know if we really, I mean, we liked each other, but I don't know that we had a strong connection. But we kept running into each other. We ran into each other in the chiropractor's office. We ran into each other, believe it or not, in an airport in Texas. If that isn't
wow.
Yes. Getting on the same plane.
Yeah. And finally Amy says to me, "I think I'm supposed to work with you." So Amy, you can pick up the story then, and then we can both talk about how we got to establish the business.
Yes. So that was right when Bonnie was getting ready to take off as a EMDR trainer. And I asked her if she would be my supervisor for my clinical hours that I needed for licensure, and also a consultant for EMDR. So I had the privilege of, working with the absolute best to learn. And so I went through EMDR training, and that was really because I had a need to understand what helps people heal after living through the worst days of their life. And that was the catalyst for me to become a therapist. And so even as a student, I started researching, what therapies are good for helping people through traumatic events, and EMDR kept popping up. And so as soon as I had the opportunity to take the EMDR training, I did. And I was so fortunate to meet Bonnie and to learn from her and to continue to learn from her. And we were just meeting. I had a small private practice, just solo. And we were meeting there, and we started talking about how great it'd be if we had an office together somewhere. And Bonnie was just becoming the trainer in our community for EMDR. So the EMDR basic training is usually done in 2 parts, and it's 6 days. And so Bonnie started thinking it'd be great to have a training room. Bonnie?
So that's, yeah. So now you guys have a training room too.
We have a training room, and the ironic thing is I've never trained in it. By the time we got it, well, actually, I haven't trained.
You did the first one.
I did train in the first one, which we won't. I could indulge in a lot of very interesting stories about that, including the time we got sold out, so we had to use rooms in the office complex that had dust on the floor and stuff because we didn't have enough people. Some of our former team members remember having to sit on the floor and other things to get started.
Wow.
We don't do that anymore. Just so you
don't
know
do that.
You just wear and everything. You come to the training.
We have a state-of-the-art training room, but interesting, I knew even then that I really didn't much need an office. What I needed was a training room. And Amy and I, in our first facility, we had offices and began to add team members. But to get back to the point, what hooked us, I think Amy has said, well, we have a heart for healing. And we share a passion for the possibility of healing no matter what. Now, Amy says this very well. You'll never be the same after something happens to you that's tragic. It affects your life. But you would be amazed at what the process of EMDR can heal, that people will think they'll never get over it. In fact, I had an old book from the 80s that talked about PTSD, and that was the title of it. I can't get over it. Well, I began to see the incredible power of healing that EMDR offers. And it's not the only thing. I'm for anything that helps people heal. But Amy and I are devoted, passionate about EMDR because time after time after time, we have seen it, we've sat with it, we've seen the results, and people are able to heal from things that they don't think they can ever feel better about. Amy, you might have some other things to add to that, but that's the thing that keeps us going and makes me want to make other people aware of this.
Yes, absolutely. And it's, I think too, defining healing, because sometimes I think there is a misunderstanding, right?
Yes.
So just like Bonnie said, we're not the same after we go through certain things. And I would add, and we don't want to be.
No.
Right? Sometimes you have such a significant loss or such a big thing happen in your life. If you continued to be the same person, it wouldn't be honoring what happened. And so with EMDR, it's about integration, right? It's about integrating the painful and the difficult with the positive and with the ability to move through those difficult things and find your own way. And it helps to define who you are as a human when you go through it in that way, looking at healing as really integration, because it's never that we just say, oh, I'm over, that horrible, especially when we're talking, about very significant trauma, right? Yeah. We're not saying, oh, you just do EMDR and like it's butterflies and sunshine and you're just healed. Instead, it's a process of, okay, I know what I know. I feel what I feel. That's from Van der Kolk in The Body Keeps the Score. But it's true. That's what integration is, right? We know what we know. And we also are aware of how what we went through has changed us and impacted our life. And then hopefully we also find our own resilience, our own power, our own autonomy through that process. And yeah, Bonnie and I are really excited and passionate about not just, we have had amazing experiences when clients have allowed us to be alongside them in that painful, to start with at least, journey. And we have seen amazing outcomes. And that led to us really wanting, like, we don't want just to be the therapist doing that. We want to help other therapists learn how to use EMDR therapy effectively and from the heart, and be able to have their clients have those same experiences, because that's what changes things. And, I know that this is such an idealistic statement, but Francine Shapiro believed EMDR could change the world. And she is, by the way, the creator of EMDR. And I love that about her because I can see why she believed that. Because when we're in a state of integration, when we're not carrying around big gaping wounds of trauma, then we stop hurting other people. And so I get why she believed that.
I would just tell a quick story about what Francine shares. She's deceased now, but she would come and speak at our conferences, and she had done EMDR with a group in Mexico. And one young man was a gang member, and he was in the back of the room, and they were using interpreters and whatever. And he had lost his brother to another gang, and he was determined to kill who had killed his loved one. And by the time they got done with it, his heart had changed so much, he became a doctor, a medical doctor.
That's my gosh.
It sounds ridiculous, like bring world peace. And when she shared those examples. So at any rate, I also wanted to respond to Russ's comment.
Thank you.
Help with depression? Absolutely. We would see depression as a symptom of the adverse experiences and the collection of memories with that, rather than as a cause. I think maybe the best way I could talk about that is most of us have an understanding from cognitive behavioral therapy, which is the most popular therapy in the US, that when you're depressed, you're thinking a lot of negative things. There are a lot of self-talk that needs to be changed and so on. We would see that self-talk as a symptom rather than a cause. It's the biggest significant difference between EMDR and cognitive behavioral work, because the cause comes from those negative beliefs that got worked in us from little on up, whether anybody else intended to have us believe those things about ourselves or not. And so with just a cognitive approach, we're just working on the top part of the brain. EMDR addresses the thinking brain and the emotional brain. So your mind and your emotions and your body are all dealt with in this work. So absolutely. And there's hundreds of types of depression. There's many reasons why people get depressed. And so it's always done with, of course, a thorough assessment of where that's coming from.
Yeah. So just to elaborate on what Bonnie is saying, that is a major distinction between EMDR and cognitive behavioral therapy and most other therapies, which is that, so with CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, therapists are focused on helping clients change their internal dialogue, that internal narrative, those negative beliefs. EMDR therapy focuses on what are the memories that laid the foundation for you to have those negative thoughts in the first place. And it's fascinating to me that when people move through EMDR, you don't have to do any separate cognitive restructuring. That happens automatically. When people integrate those difficult experiences, the negative thinking, those negative thoughts or those harmful thoughts, I think is a better way to say it, goes away on its own. So it's, it's a major distinction. And it also, I think, is timely. That's why you're hearing more about it, because, recently they've learned that some things they thought about, researchers have learned some things they thought about depression, according to the medical model, is really just not holding up with the research. And so EMDR is the answer to how do we help with what happened to you, right? Because Dr. Perry has a great book with Oprah Winfrey called What Happened to You? And they're basically saying the medical model has said, what is wrong with you, right? What's wrong with your brain that you are feeling depressed? And then, of course, over time, we've learned, first of all, those chemicals aren't all just made in the brain, right? In the last 10, 15 years, we've learned so much about this, that it's this mind-body connection, because so much is actually happening in the gut. And we know when people go through adverse experiences, it completely disrupts the way our gut is functioning and the way the body is functioning. And that every time something activates those memories, again, there is an impact on the body, which impacts all the production of the feel-good chemicals, essentially. And so now I think the question, what happened to you, is more relevant. It's always been relevant, but now I think the medical community cannot deny the relevance to that question. So what happened to you, rather than what's wrong with you? And EMDR is the answer to how we work with that.
This is fascinating, and like your passion comes through, and it's obviously this is your passion. You care strongly about this, and you are making an impact. I love the story you shared, Bonnie. That's truly amazing. You answered so many of our questions just now that you were telling us, which is great. We can just sit back and learn from you. But so how have you seen like EMDR therapy evolve and grow over the years? And what does the future hold for it? Where is it going to go in the mental health field? Like, what impact is it going to make going forward?
Well, last 30 years has brought a lot of change. And at the same time, Amy and I are passionate about the standard protocol that Dr. Francine Shapiro developed. It's 8 phases and 3 what we call prongs, 8 phases of therapy, from beginning history all the way to reevaluation. How did it go? I don't need to get into the 8 phases here, but 3 prongs: past, present, and future. So we look at issues from the past, we look at issues from the present, and we can also use EMDR for future processing. And that is from kiddos who had to have surgeries when they were little, so they're terrified to go to the doctor, to I have anxiety and I have to make a presentation next week. And we can even take time out from working on past things to do a little processing that will strengthen their adaptive coping in the future. So that remains as a foundation. Now we know much more about all the ways we can adapt it to working with various presenting issues and diagnoses, while we still have to use diagnoses because insurance companies want them. We aren't too fond of diagnosing because it doesn't tell you what to do about it. We would see most, if not all, childhood mental health issues coming from adverse experiences, and the behaviors are their way of trying to find a way to meet their needs. And that changes your perspective with difficult clients as a therapist, because you just don't label them as what's the common word? Resistive. I haven't used it in so long, I forgot it. This is a resistive client. This client is resisting my efforts to help them. Nonsense. It's a partnership that we have with the client, and we must believe in their capacity to heal. And with EMDR, our brains are amazing. So I think the neuroscience has actually validated through the years what Shapiro discovered. She talked about the neural pathways before we had ability to do that. And isn't it ironic that many people who specialize in psychiatry and mental health never look at the brain as the organ that they're dealing with? And as Amy said, we'd have to look at the gut too, and the vagus nerve and other things now that we know, to really understand it. I think that's the ability to expand through gifted and creative clinicians who use standard protocol, and also have an audience of clients have a specialty that they're passionate about, so they develop ways to make good clinical decisions to change that standard protocol, so we can work with more effectively with like complex trauma, dissociation, personality disorders, which is, to me, trauma that just has been embedded in the first few years of the person's life. all kinds of things. The other change that I see is more understanding and emphasis on the body part of the work. When you process an EMDR, your therapist assists you in focusing on what you're thinking and what your emotions are and where you feel it in your body. And that we even have ways to help people who are cut off at the neck because they learned it's not safe to feel in their body. So more recent developments, including some excellent therapies that focus on somatic interventions, I believe EMDR has come to, was always there, but it was still kind of a minor node in the threesome. And now we know the body's the first to respond, and it's also often the last to heal as we do EMDR work.
Bonnie and Amy, I mean, I know you guys for a while. I know how strong EMDR today is, just making it even stronger. I believe every mental health clinician needs to have EMDR in their training. Like it's a must, especially again what this world is going through.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit more about the training programs that you're offering, how it's impacting the clinicians, not just their business, but how it's impacting their clients?
Absolutely. So I wanted to say one thing in response to what Bonnie was saying, that because I think it's so important, and I want other therapists to hear it, because what Bonnie was talking about is part of the foundation EMDR is built on is what we call the AIP model, the adaptive information processing model. And in that model is an understanding that the brain is wired for health. And so just like our body is wired for health, so is our brain. You know, I had a break in my tailbone a few years ago, and it's fascinating to me that the doctors did nothing. I mean, they helped me understand how to care for myself, but my body fused that bone back together all on its own. That is magical if you think about it, right?
Yeah.
We have this internal mechanism that when we have a broken bone in our body knows how to fix it. That's remarkable. And so Shapiro figured out and understood that, hey, if that's true for the body, it's true for the mind, because the mind is part of the body, or the brain is. And so that is just, I think, a remarkable thing. And also, as therapists, when we learn EMDR, part of what we learn is how to embrace that the client's healing doesn't have to come directly from us, right? That it comes from within them. And that is another distinction between EMDR and other therapies. It's not us as the expert that's helping the client get better. It's their own internal mechanism for healing that does it, which is beautiful. So, sorry, Nancy, I just
no, that was so important. I love it. No, please don't be sorry.
So the trainings we offer. So I'm now a basic trainer or a comprehensive EMDR trainer. So that means when people want to become an EMDR therapist, or they want to be trained in EMDR, I am one of the people in our community who can do that training. Bonnie has retired from doing that, and she was a wonderful trainer and really helped to create an amazing EMDR community. I have to tell you, I'm very proud of it, because I go to trainings, that are in other states, and Iowa is always strongly represented. We have a thriving, beautiful EMDR community. And Bonnie was the catalyst in many, many ways for that. She, just had such a good reputation as being an engaging trainer and being so wise. And I was able to pick up the torch and have been, continuing those trainings here. And then we also offer at EMDR and Beyond advanced trainings. So we offer trainings that are specific to, working with certain symptoms that people may have, working with more complex symptoms or complex trauma. And we also like to bring in other EMDR experts from around the United States. I don't know, Bonnie, if you want to say more
Well,
about
we try to get some of the biggest names in the EMDR community come to West Des Moines, Iowa. In fact, in a few weeks, we have an international author and trainer and educator, one of our favorite presenters, Dr. Robin Shapiro, coming to teach us again. We have her every few years. And the first time I met her, I mean, I'm just little Bonnie, farm girl from Iowa, and I meet her in person. So I pick her up at the airport, and I said, "Oh, you're my favorite." I'm gushing. I'm being ridiculous. And she said, "Give me 10 minutes, and you'll feel like you've known me forever." And she is just one example of many. We also are proud to say that we grow our own trainers. So we have several team members who are trainers. So just reflecting on what happens to people, when they get involved in EMDR. Most of them are pretty surprised in basic training. We've had many people come skeptical and have an experience personally when they're practicing on each other using the techniques. In seeing how it works. In fact, I've even had a couple of participants. One was mad because she'd done therapy for 10 years, and then she finds out with EMDR that it's still there. Well, it wasn't that therapy wasn't effective, but it didn't, in my opinion, go deep enough into the heart of the matter. I think EMDR clinicians in training learn that they need to get past their prefrontal cortex, their thinking brain, and into their hearts. Now, not everybody is as passionate or as open or as committed as we are. There's all different styles. Some people are more heady than others. But the main thing is to believe that the client has that capacity through the adaptive information process that we have learned, and to begin to experience that. So besides the fact that it's great for business, because as soon as somebody says they do EMDR, they're booked up. We have new team members, they're booked up within 6 months. And right now we have, is it 9 therapists? Amy, I think 9 or 10. And anyway, they're all booked.
That's great.
Yeah. Yes, it's painful how many people we have to turn down. And so that's another very practical reason why we're committed to training. The changes in people's personal lives as therapists is also an impact. I think if I could respectfully say to other therapy approaches, I think the impact is more powerful, just like the therapy has been more powerful, because one of the things that when a lifelong issue can get healed in EMDR basic training with another clinician who doesn't know anything about the process and is just stumbling around, that's amazing. One of the voices for us is Dr. Bessel van der Kolk. The Body Keeps the Score is to me his best book. And in it, he talks about when he was basic trained, and this was when Francine Shapiro was doing it. He went out of curiosity and a desire to debunk what she was doing. He thought it was nonsense. Who is this lady waving her fingers in front of people's faces and thinking that's healing? Well, he had an amazing healing in his practice session in the basic training. And the funny part was his partner didn't like him at all. So there was no rapport, and he still got better. So we would prefer rapport, right, Amy? But
love it.
It's very important. But the changes are magnified personally and professionally. I had no idea what I was getting into. And every step of the way, it's blown me away. And the results for clients are the thing that people and keeps us going. And so we see you start out with some of the basic kind of presenting issues like anxiety and depression, which really there's nothing basic about either of those, but it's not the same as PTSD, what people would consider more complex. But you continue to see the amazing capacity of human beings to heal. I'm sorry I get so moved by that, And I also am moved by the fact that there is still so much pain out there. And pain that actually could be addressed if we had the capacity to do it. And I want to say again, we're absolutely off the wall about EMDR, but I'm for anything that helps people heal. I'm not, and so I'm not about the business of trashing. We see things differently, but there's lots of effective ways to go. This is the one we see as the most powerful.
And
Yeah.
so I just echo everything Bonnie said so beautifully. And Nancy, I want to say one more thing about our advanced trainings is that we also offer advanced trainings for therapists who work with children.
Yes.
I have had the great privilege of training with Ana Gomez, who is very well known and I would say loved in the EMDR community as a child EMDR expert. She presents all around the world. And I am a trainer for the Agate Institute, which is her institute. And we teach advanced trainings on EMDR with children for therapists who are interested in integrating EMDR into their practice with children, because EMDR was originally created for working with adults. So it does have to be slightly modified to work with children. But that's another specialty training that we offer. It's a week-long training. We are offering the EMDR Child Specialist this year, as well as EMDR and Sandtray, which is a very beautiful combination of therapies. And they're both week-long intensives. So.
Guys, I think it's so important what you guys said, because again, I'm coming back to the pandemic, and I know it was 3 years ago, but it's still, people are suffering still so much, especially the kids. I mean, the adults, yes, for sure, but we've grown up, right? But the kids who are still in their learning, I can just imagine the type of feedback that you're getting from different clinicians who've completed the training program from you guys. I mean, how are they feeling about it? How are they growing it? What are their strengths? How are they feeling like that satisfaction of helping that child, that adult, go through what they're going through?
Yes. I have had many conversations with other EMDR therapists where we agree that we're not sure we could have longevity in this field if we were not trained in EMDR.
Yes.
Because you do get to see people get better, right? And we're not saying EMDR is a magic wand or just like, all anyone in the world needs is EMDR. Some people need something different. But many people have great outcomes and success with EMDR. And so when you're an EMDR therapist, you might think like, working with trauma, that must be so depressing and difficult. And yeah, there can be times where it's heavy, of course, because we care deeply.
Hard work.
Clients. But it's so rewarding because I can start EMDR with a client and I think to myself, it's going to be so cool when they don't believe this about themselves anymore. It's going to be so cool when they don't have these triggers and they don't feel, the stress and the emotional activation that they're feeling all the time. And we really get to see that happen. And I know that there are other therapies where those types of outcomes just take much, much longer. And some therapists don't get to see that. So I know it changes practices for sure.
It's beautiful what you said, Amy.
We're going to have you guys back on our podcast at a later time, because I know there's like so much more we could dive into here. And it's so fascinating and it's inspiring, like hearing your stories and how you impact your clients. I do want to ask one thing, as you told us a little bit about your background and your journey to get where you are now, and now all the impact you're making on other therapists as well as your clients. So on this road to entrepreneurship, which is what it is ultimately, make an impact, I know you've gone through a lot of ups and downs, but what is the most surprising thing that you have seen from it or taken away from your journey so far? What surprised you the most? Tough question.
I don't know. I'm probably baffled half the time. I can tell you that each step on what we would call our EMDR journey I never intended to do that. I mean, I started this when I was older. I was going to retire, and they asked me to be a trainer, and so I am surprised at the depth of this work and how our business has grown. I didn't have that big a vision. I just wanted to work with Amy and have a training.
Yes.
And I know with working with Nancy, it's going to even grow more. In fact, I was just thinking to myself, this is a joke on me. So I'm working to establish our offsite. You know, we do a lot of training in our office, but we also send people to some of our trainers that we have homegrown, so to speak, our team members or consultants or whatever, to other places, and usually places where I've trained, which I've trained in the Midwest, Oklahoma, and Amy's trained in South Dakota and Minnesota and those kinds of things. So I was working on that, and it's been more successful than I thought. And here I've accidentally been growing the business again. It's not that I didn't want to. I was just busy thinking, oh, how can we get this out to people? And I'm thinking, wait a minute, this is going to be a lot of work.
Yeah, but the good thing is that you're delegating a lot of work.
You're not doing all.
Yeah, it's slowly, because your aim is to get out of it, but your passion is there, Bonnie. Like,
that will never go away. And the thing is, the people I'm talking to about bringing our specialty trainings, they're ones who want to nurture the EMDR community in their areas to become robust, like ours has become in recent years. And some of them are in better places than others, but their interest is to bring that to their EMDR community. And I see it, if I can put it this way, as an elder in the field, it's the next generation. Like Amy said, passing the baton. Oh, it's the most wonderful thing. I really enjoy making plans and having other people do them. So that's the thing that surprised me the most, is the success of it. We have been more than blessed. And to do what you love to do and then have compensation for it, to me, is the most amazing gift in life.
I love it.
I agree.
Did you have anything to add on that one, Amy?
Just it's really about the same. How quickly we grew is the thing that surprises me the most, because the very first training room we had, Bonnie's very first training, we were overfull, and we realized we have to expand. So we actually did construction on that space to expand the training room, and the next training, too full. And I was, at the time, we were getting so many referrals for clients that we thought, geez, we should bring in some therapists to help with all these referrals. And now today, as Bonnie said, here we have all these therapists, and it's still, the need is just so vast. So I think the two things that surprised me the most is how quickly things evolved and grew, and how much need there still is for, well-trained EMDR therapists. So
yeah, and you know what, both of you guys, you guys, just as the humans that you are lovable people. You are servers. No, but I mean, it's the truth, right? I talk to you guys all the time. Your heart is there, and we see it and feel it right through you. Good. So we know, we're all in business to make money, right? But the end game at the end is to not just help the clinician, it's to help those people that are suffering, and you're doing that, right? So I am so proud of you guys, and I love the fact that you guys have, you were one of the first EMDR that started, and today there's a lot of competition around.
Yes, there
but
is. We're glad.
That's such a good answer, Bonnie, because a lot of people are scared of competition, and you shouldn't be, because you are amazing at what you do, and that's why you've grown so quickly, Amy and Bon, right? That is why. Yeah. Anita, did you have anything to?
No, it's obvious that your passion is what grows your business.
Mm-hmm.
That's That's what it is.
Yeah,
Yeah.
can't help it. It just flows, and we thank God for it. It's just an amazing experience on our part, and I also thank you two for listening to us because
Yes.
we didn't hardly get any questions in
Oh
because
no,
we're
you're
talking to two
great.
trainers who are used to just you can tell we could go on forever about this, but we won't.
Yeah, no,
Our
you
job
guys
is
are
here.
great.
At least for 6 days. That's how long the training is.
So I do have one final question for our viewers, listeners. If somebody wants to take a basic or advanced course with you, how do they reach you? And for an individual that has the need, how do they find an EMDR specialist? I know it's two
Okay.
complete different questions, but I think it would be really great to just at least have something like
Yes.
that our viewers can hear.
Thank you for asking that question, because I realized I wanted to mention and hadn't that the training that I teach, that is the comprehensive EMDR training, which is the baseline. So if you're a therapist, a mental health professional, a counselor, and you want trained in EMDR, you need to go through a comprehensive training that is EMDRIA approved. So that's the EMDR International Association. And so there are some out there that are not EMDRIA approved, and basically it's not good because then you can't be part of the EMDR community in the same way. It's just not the same standards. So that training is through EMDR Consulting, and I'm listed on their website as a trainer. And so any trainings that I am doing through EMDR Consulting are listed there. And then, of course, we promote those on our website and our Facebook page at EMDR and Beyond. And Bonnie, do you want to talk about access to the other advanced
Yes,
training?
and on our website we would have more than probably you want to know about EMDR. We have client testimonies, we have interviews with experts, and we have old and new things on our website, and on our training page we have a list of our online courses that anyone can take on demand, and we also have our current offerings, which will increase this year. Now we're kind of coming out of the fog of pandemic. We're working with Nancy, and she is assisting us in figuring out where we are and where we need to go. The other thing in regard to anyone who wants to access an EMDR therapist would be to go to the website emdria.org, EMDRIA, emdria.org, and you'll see a menu thing that says find a therapist, and it will list therapists that are available. I will tell you that there are lots of clinicians, however, who are not members of EMDRIA. So the other really good way is ask somebody who does EMDR, like Amy or myself. Sometimes we know someone in the area, and they may not be, it's not required. They set the professional standards, and some people choose, don't really have a need. If you choose to go on to become certified, which is an additional 20 hours of training, or become a consultant or trainer, you're more likely to be on EMDRIA, which is good because those would be the people who would have the most experience. But there's excellent EMDR clinicians in many communities now, and EMDRIA has the best list. Sometimes if there isn't someone near the person that's listed, the clinician that's listed on the EMDRIA website, you can email them anyway and say, do you know someone? I get those emails still. Do you know someone in this area? Because that personal connection can really make a difference. And there's, a lot of therapists who are they're just busy healing people. They aren't really involved in the organization and whatever. And so it's not difficult really to locate someone as it used to be.
Amazing. Thank you, guys. We have gained so much great insight from you both. Is there anything else that you would like to leave us with and our listeners with?
I feel like
thank you. We have a lot of gratitude for being asked to be part of this, and we appreciate your time and your interest in EMDR. And Yeah, it was
Well,
great. Thank you.
you guys are making such a huge impact because it's wider, right? It's you're training the clinicians, and the clinicians are going out to get clients, right? So you are making such a huge
Spreading
impact.
the impact. Yeah.
What a
Oh
privilege.
yeah.
What a
Oh
privilege
yeah.
to have.
It's been amazing. So thank you to you both, Bonnie and Amy, again for joining us. We're gonna put you backstage for 2 minutes. We're gonna come and join you in a minute.
All right.
And thank you again. It's been such an honor and a pleasure to have you guys on our podcast today.
Thank you for being here. So that was truly inspiring and so educational. So to some quick takeaways, Nancy, I have a couple of things. I love the phrase that was said. I think it was Bonnie that said it, that they have the heart for healing.
Yes.
Because it truly comes through in everything they say and do, and the passion and that heart for healing comes through.
Absolutely. And let me just touch on that. It's just like what we do. Like, you can't be a business coach, just like you can't be an EMDR without having your heart in it.
Yes.
Right. And really put your full in it. And I really can't imagine seeing a specialist that doesn't love to heal people, to actually study. Like, what's the point? Right.
And sorry, and that goes into what we talked about towards the end here. Like, that heart comes through, and it's truly the passion and the heart that has grown their business to where it is now. Yeah. Because it shines through so brightly.
Yep. I love it. So a few takeaways that I got, and it's just little sparkles that sometimes we kind of forget, but I think it was Amy that said it. Activating things in the brain is what impacts the next steps. That is so important, right? And she said something else. She said, what happens to you instead of what's wrong with you it's such an important way to ask the question or think of that answer, because what's wrong with you puts you in a position like, something is wrong with me. Like, I'm not good, right? And that our brain is wired for our health. Like, that body that we have, we have so much capability that most of us have no idea how to use this body, right? But we have this internal mechanism that our body knows about it. If it knows how to fix a broken bone, like Amy said, then it is true for the body as well. So it's true for the brain.
Yeah, and that was another thing that was said that stood out to me too. The body is the first to respond, and it's the first to heal. I love that. Because we all know that if anything happens up here, it also impacts your body. Just look at what stress does to us, right? Look what stress does to your body. So it's that's our body is there to let us know what's going on.
Yeah. And yeah, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Bonnie said something that was and they kind of both brought it in, that healing is coming from within us. It's not from the clinicians that they're training, but the clinicians that they're training are helping us humans see what our body is capable to do, what our internal mechanism is able to do without the, me, not the passion of prescription drugs and I don't know what, you got depression, pop a pill, like, it's so important. And that's why, like, I am looking forward to what's going to happen with their business and the EMDR community in the next few years.
I have one last takeaway, which I thought was so important, and that was the whole discussion around what is trauma and broadening our perspective on what trauma is, and don't put trauma in a box. And then on top of that, what is healing? Like, healing is not forget about it and get out, snap out of it. Healing is like, how do you integrate it with who you are, and how has that trauma impacted you and changed who you are as a person? And how do you come out of it on the other side and integrate it with who you are now?
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah, absolutely. Listen, guys, just like they both said, EMDRIA.org. Find a specialist. And I could just, think of so many people that would need this type of session. Look, make sure that you keep in touch with Anita and I to learn what else that we have going. Our opportunities for having additional information. Come and learn with us, from us. We're here. We want you to know that we love being here every week with you guys.
And if you want to be a guest, reach out to us. And, if you have a business that makes an impact and you want to share your journey, reach out to us. We'll be happy to talk to you and see if we can add you as a guest in the future. Now, next week is our monthly Business Lounge episode. So you're stuck with just Nancy and I.
Yay.
And we're going to talk about that's when we dive into a specific topic. We go in depth on a topic that will help you grow your business. And next week, we're going to tackle mission and vision. Small business, big impact, develop a mission and vision that resonates. Most importantly, that resonates. So join us for that. And we hope you enjoyed this week's episode.
Until next week, guys, go make an impact.
Thank you for listening to Impactful Business Voices. Subscribe now and don't miss an episode.